welcome to another episode of Jazzology presented by Savage Content. I'm your host, Willard Jenkins. We're here alternating Fridays, giving two jazz fans the opportunity to compete against each other for a chance to win $100. Each contestant will be asked a question worth 2 points. If they're unable to answer correctly, their opponent will have the chance to steal the question for 1 point. We'll ask 10 questions, and at the end of the 10 questions, the person with the lowest score will get a bonus question for the opportunity to tie the score. If they're successful, the game will go to sudden death. Each contestant will then take turns trying to answer the final multiple choice question until we have a winner. The person in the lead at the end of regulation will go first. The contestants will alternate chances to answer the question until one gets it correct. Let's meet this week's contestants. Unfortunately, our reigning champion, George V. Johnson Jr., is unable to join us due to illness. Get well soon, George. We'll see you the next episode. But today, in George's place, we have guitarist and journalist for NPR and the New York Times, Brad Farberman. Welcome, Brad.
How's it going?
Good. Brad, tell us what makes you a jazzologist.
Probably just all the hours I put in listening to jazz, attempting to play jazz, writing about jazz, thinking about jazz, dreaming about jazz. I'd say it's
that sounds jazzologist worthy. Our second challenger is jazz enthusiast Michael Brown, who hails from the Southern California area known as the Inland Empire. Mike, I got to ask you the question. What makes you a jazzologist?
I think it's in my DNA, going way back to my family. It's kind of wake up in the morning, go to sleep at night. It was jazz all day, all night. And so I'm just thankful to God that he gave me the faculties to be able to appreciate jazz. So thanks for asking the question, Mr. Jenkins.
All right. Well, we got two thoroughly immersed contestants today. So let's get to today's jazzology questions, and Brad will go first. You ready, Brad?
I'm going to try.
All right. Well, vocalist Kurt Elling has a new band called Super Blue. Who is the guitarist in that band?
Charlie Hunter.
Well, Brad, you got to give us time to the vocalist Kurt Elling has a new band called Super Blue. Who is the guitarist in that band? Is it A, Bill Frisell, B, John Schofield, C, Russell Malone, D, Charlie Hunter, or E, Bobby Broom? And who is it?
It's Charlie Hunter.
It's Charlie Hunter. You are absolutely correct. It is Charlie Hunter who is the guitarist in Kurt Elling's new band, Super Blue. All right, Michael, you ready?
I'm all set.
The band known as the Cookers has two saxophonists. One of them is tenor saxophonist Billy Harper. Who is the other saxophonist in the Cookers? Is it A, Donald Harrison, B, Kenny Garrett, C, Oliver Lake, D, Craig Handy, or E, none of the above?
That's a good question. I would have to say A, Donald Harrison, because I believe he's been with Billy Harper and a few of the other members of the band, including Billy Hart, I think, on drums, and the great Cecil McBee. I think he's in his late 80s on bass. And I was able to see the band. Craig Handy actually sat in for Donald Harrison. So I think there's probably two answers to this question. But I'm going to go with Donald Harrison. But I also want to say congratulations, Brad, on that the answer that you gave for Charlie Hunter, who is also he's also the bass player too, with Kurt Elling, the bass player playing simultaneously the lead guitar and the bass. Amazing. So I'm going to go with Donald
in all his
Harrison.
bands.
You'll go with Donald Harrison?
I'm going to go with Donald Harrison.
That is correct. That is correct. And actually, you actually landed on the fact that there are actually two correct answers to that question. As you mentioned, Craig Handy does play with the Cookers on occasion when Donald can't make it. So it would have been either Donald Harrison or Craig Handy would have been the correct answer. So there you go. Well, Brad, we're tied up now. Brad, which of the following trombonists has written a suite in tribute to Muhammad Ali titled Brown Butterfly? Is that A, Conrad Herwig, B, Craig Harris, C, Steve Turre, D, Steve Davis, or E, Michael Dees?
I am going to say the amazing Craig Harris.
Well, we're batting 1,000 today. The correct answer is indeed Craig Harris. Craig Harris did indeed write a suite of music in tribute to Muhammad Ali titled Brown Butterfly. Michael, you're up next. Which of the following young musicians presented a popular series of virtual performances live from his living room during the pandemic shutdown? Was that A, Emmett Cohen, B, Sullivan Fortner, C, Christian Sands, D, Chris Bowers, or E, Gerald Clayton?
Okay. I'm not going to resort to my sophisticated methodology in choosing, which is simply going to eeny, meeny, miny, mo. I'm not going to do that. I just know he's aside from being a great pianist, but he's a great orator as well, and interviewer, much like yourself, Willard. I'm going to go with C, Christian Sands.
I'm sorry, that is incorrect, and Brad has an opportunity to steal this question. Brad.
Okay.
Brad, which of the following young musicians presented a popular series of virtual performances from his living room during the pandemic shutdown? Was that A, Emmett Cohen, B, Sullivan Fortner, C, Christian Sands, D, Chris Bowers, or E, Gerald Clayton? And Christian Sands, C, has been eliminated.
I'm going to have to rely on my internet addiction for this one. And I'm going to say, if memory serves, was it Emmett Cohen?
Yes, indeed it was. And Brad steals the point. It was Emmett Cohen. Emmett Cohen presented a series of virtual performances from his living room during the pandemic with a lot of great guests, including some great masters like George Coleman and others. So wow. That's correct, Brad. So, Brad, you're up next.
Okay.
The DC Jazz Festival CEO is a woman named Sunny Sumter. Which other of the following major jazz festivals is produced by a Black woman, which is unique? Would it be A, the Detroit Jazz Festival, B, the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival, C, the New Mexico Jazz Festival, D, the Chicago Jazz Festival, or E, the Pittsburgh Jazz Festival?
Let's see. I'm going to guess Pittsburgh.
Brad is killing. I don't know, Mike. Brad is killing. That is correct. The Pittsburgh Jazz Festival is produced by a woman named Janet Burley. So there are two, perhaps the only two major jazz festivals in the country produced by Black women. It's time for our mid-show break and time to let you know that Jazzology is brought to you by Savage Content, an exciting new purveyor of quality music programming. From podcasts, live performances, and interviews, Savage Content offers an eclectic mix of curated entertainment programming for all music lovers. Be sure to follow Savage Content on social media to hear about our latest releases, and check out the store on savagecontent.com to get your official Jazzology merchandise. Now it's time to ask our contestants our favorite question. Savage Content has thus far hosted 2 video essay contests asking contestants the question how they fell in love with jazz. So for each episode of Jazzology, we like to pose that question to our contestants. And Michael, you mentioned it at the top, but in addition to that influence you felt at home from your parents' music, how did you fall in love with jazz?
Yeah, the influence I've had, it was just, I like to put it this way, it was just no escape. You know, listening to, these organ grinders that were filling the rooms in our home where I grew up, Jack McDuff and Jimmy McGriff and especially Jimmy Smith. Actually, my friends would come by in my early teenage years, and of course we would listen to Jimmy Smith's The Sermon, and each of us would kind of take a pretend instrument. We weren't musicians, but somebody's
air instrument.
Yeah, exactly. the broom, and the pots and pans. But it was a real group effort. I actually thought Jimmy Smith lived in our house because we heard it so much. I thought he had a back room. But same.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the same way with guitars, Kenny Burrell and Wes Montgomery and Dave Brubeck, the Jazz Crusaders. I can remember, the longest solo from Duke Ellington's Crescendo and Diminuendo in Blue that just seemed to be forever, and just mimicking the flow of the orchestra. Just day in and day out. Vocalists in my life, that I kind of grew up with were Sarah Vaughan, Ella Fitzgerald, and Dinah Washington, Nat King Cole, Arthur Prysock, a couple of the lesser known, Gloria Lynn and Lou Rawls. These were all major influences, but they morphed. Of course, many of them have passed on to ancestry, but they morphed into the artists that I appreciate today in my life. And of course, Miles Train, the Jazz Messengers, and Weather Report, the Fusion era, Return to Forever. So it's been a full.
Sounds like you could go on and on.
Yeah, it's a full menu. It's full menu, and the newer, the young lions, that have come on. And I just have to say to the listeners that we're so blessed that it continues to this day with new artists. So when some transition to that home in the sky, that great orchestra, there's always someone new that's coming in with new ideas and exploration and innovation to continue to flourish this great music called jazz.
Well, thank you so much, Michael. And how about you, Brad? How did you fall in love with jazz?
That's a good question. I think a big part of it was growing up on Long Island, which was very boring, but it was close to New York City. So I was able to see a lot of live music growing up and also actually on Long Island. So I think one of my earliest live jazz memories is seeing Herbie Hancock on Long Island. They made an album of that tour. It was with Roy Hargrove and Michael Brecker, and there was no turning back.
All right.
So.
Well, let's get back to the questions, and let's start with Michael. Michael, which of the following piano players has a trio known as the Bandwagon? Is that A, Orrin Evans, B, Fred Hirsch, C, Christian Sands, D, Jason Moran, or E, Jeffrey Keyser?
Oh, Willard, that's a tough one. And the bandwagon.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to take a stab at this one and go with Jason Moran.
That is indeed correct. Jason Moran has a trio, long-standing trio, known as the Bandwagon, with Nachit Waits on the drums and Forrest McKean on the bass. Brad, you ready?
I'm ready.
Brad 7, Michael 4, and it's Brad's turn up. Brad, which of the following musicians was one of the founders of the annual Vision Festival in New York City? Was that A, William Parker, B, Oliver Lake, C, Julius Hemphill, D, Anthony Davis, or E, none of the above?
All amazing musicians, Oliver Lake and Hemphill, two of the greatest saxophonists of all time, but the founder is William Parker.
Now, to be perfectly correct, as I said in the question, he is one of the founders.
Yeah, and Patricia, his wife, Patricia Nicholson Parker,
the choreographer. So you are correct. Michael, the still fairly young all-woman supergroup known as Artemis, which released its debut album on the Blue Note label in 2020, currently consists of Allison Miller on the drums, Noriko Ueda on the bass, Rini Rosnes on piano, Ingrid Jensen on trumpet, and saxophonist Nicole Glover and Alexa Tarantino. Which of these musicians serves as the band's musical director? Would that be A, Allison Miller, B, Ingrid Jensen, C, Rini Rosnes, D, Alexa Tarantino, or E, none of the above?
Again, Willard, you keep throwing these tough ones out here, and make me lose my hair here, worried about which I don't have very much to start with. Brad, you got plenty. I may have to ask you for some. I'm going to go with, I actually saw the band. I was so impressed, especially with the drummer. I'm going to go with C, Rini Rosnes, the keyboard player.
That is correct. That is correct. And tell me, was there any sense of process of elimination in your case, thinking, oh, it had to be the piano player?
No.
Okay, Brad. You ready, Brad?
I'm ready.
All right. Alto saxophonist Lakeisha Benjamin has been widely hailed for her current recording and subsequent performances of the music of Alex and John Coltrane. Lakeisha Benjamin also leads the band on the funkier side of things, which is known as, is it A, the Soul Squad, B, the firing unit, C, funk personified, D, the Lakeisha Benjamin Sextet, or E, the Legacy Quintet?
Okay, so I happen to know that it's A, the Soul Squad.
Oh, I'm telling you, Brad is killing. Brad is killing, Mike. I don't know. Michael Brown, you're up next. Before we hear our bonus round, Michael, who sang and played a tune based on Langston Hughes' classic poem, I've Known Rivers? Was that A, Roy Hargrove, B, Gary Bartz, C, Pharoah Sanders, D, Shirley Horn, or E, Grady Tate?
I just want to take a moment, too, to recognize the passing of Pharoah Sanders, one of the greatest reed players of all time. I do happen to have this album. It's a 2-record set on vinyl, which Gary Bartz recorded probably 50 years ago, I'm thinking, somewhere in there, 1970. And I think the name of the album was entitled I've Known Rivers, which, of course, as you mentioned, was the poem written by Langston Hughes. So I'm going to go with B, Gary Bartz.
All right. That's correct. The correct answer is Gary Bartz. Gary Bartz, who vocalized the Langston Hughes poem, I've Known Rivers, on a recording made at the Montreux Jazz Festival, in fact. So now we are at our bonus round. And for our bonus round, Michael Brown will get an opportunity to tie Brad. You ready, Michael?
I'm about as ready as I could be. Brad's tough. He's tough.
And see, you got to understand also, the questions were designed for George V. Johnson Jr., but Brad has been knocking him out of the park.
He has.
As our guest contestant. So, Michael, your chance to tie Brad is right now. The late trombonist Benny Powell, who worked extensively with the Count Basie Orchestra, spent many of his senior years as a member of what band? Was it A, Art Blakey's Jazz Messengers, B, Randy Weston's African Rhythms, C, the Gerald Wilson Orchestra, D, the Vanguard Jazz Orchestra, or E, none of the above?
Well, I could easily jump on that letter E, but I'm apprehensive about that at the moment. I don't think it was Art Blakey's Jazz Messengers. I followed the evolution of Art's band probably since its inception. And I'm not all that familiar with the Vanguard Jazz Orchestra as much as I am with Gerald Wilson. But I'm gonna guess, and it is a guess, that it would be Randy Weston's African Rhythms.
And yes, that is correct. And our
Yes.
score is tied. We now go to sudden death. And Brad will go first. Charles Mingus wrote his autobiography titled Beneath the Underdog, published in 1971. Subsequently, the biography of Charles Mingus, titled Myself When I Am Real, was later published in 2011, 30 years later. Who wrote that Mingus biography titled Myself When I Am Real? Would that be A, Sue Mingus, B, Gene Santoro, C, Andrew Gilbert, D, Ted Pankin, or E, Dan Morgan?
All good possibilities. I met Dan Morgenstern when I was getting my master's in jazz history at Rutgers. Ted Pankin's a great writer, but this is Gene Santoro.
And Brad Farberman is our champion, our new champion. The correct answer to the question as to who wrote the Charles Mingus biography titled Myself When I Am Real, it came out in 2011. It was written by the late, and I'm sad to say that because he just passed a couple months ago, the late Gene Santoro wrote that. Well, congratulations, Brad, on your win. Michael Brown, we're definitely going to have you back at a certain point. We encourage each and every one of you to try your hand and play Jazzology. We are particularly encouraging more women to compete on Jazzology.
Yes, indeed.
And if anyone watching would like to become a contestant on Jazzology, click the link on this link below and simply fill out the form. You must be 18 years or older, and be sure to follow us on social media at Savage Content to get all the latest news and updates. Thank you so much to Brad Farberman and Michael Brown, and to everyone who joined today. Remember, you can check us out every other Friday at 2:30 p.m. And if you missed the show live, you can find the archive on the Savage Content YouTube channel. All right. Thank you both.
Thank you
Thanks
too.
a lot.
Take care.
Congratulations, Brad.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well done.